Hi, my name's Elizabeth. I am an aquarist at the Greensboro Science Center, and I primarily work with our jellyfish. So jellyfish propagation and all things that sting you.
And I'm Katie Benya. I'm the Signathid aquarist at the Greensboro Science Center. So I work with all of our seahorses, our cold water stuff, and the lead on the ray training team.
Hello, I'm John Rossi. I'm a touring drummer with a passion for animal conservation. When I'm on the road, I spend as much time as possible visiting zoos, aquariums, and conservation organizations. Now, I want to share those places with you. I'll be talking to keepers, vets, conservationists, anyone who can help me in my mission of connecting my people to animals through their people. Join me on my Rossifari. Hi, hello, how are you? Welcome back to the Rossifari podcast. So y'all, we have been spending a lot of time between last season and the start of this one at the Greensboro Science Center. And frankly, that's been because there's so much cool stuff happening there right now and so many amazing people that we get to spend time with. But so far, all of our time spent there has been at the zoo. But it turns out that Greensboro actually has an incredible aquarium as part of the overall science center there. And so today we are stepping away from the zoo, but heading to the aquarium to bring you my interview with Elizabeth Hincker and Katie Benya, who are both people that work at the aquarium and are going to be talking about some really cool, really unique topics, y'all. We are talking about jelly propagation, about seahorses. We're talking about training with rays and eels, all kinds of cool stuff. We get into some octopus stuff a little bit. There's a whole lot of kind of, I don't know, lesser charismatic, if you don't know them, less popular, whatever animals. Although I got to tell you, I think they're all really incredible. And this conversation, it definitely goes to places that our podcast hasn't really gone to before, which is always exciting for me. So I hope it's exciting for you as well. So yeah, if you're sitting here and you're hearing this intro and your first thought was, oh, we're back at Greensboro. Okay, I like it there, but we've been there a lot. This is it's like a whole different facility. It's really cool that there is both an aquarium and a zoo at one place, and that they are, intertwined and they know each other and stuff, but at the same time, they're very different parts of the same facility. And I'm excited to share that difference with y'all today and all these cool little stories. So Elizabeth and Katie are awesome, and we're going to get to them in a moment. But first, let me remind you to make sure that you hit subscribe so you don't miss any episodes of the pod. Make sure that you have left a rating or a review or both anywhere that you can do that, anywhere that you listen. 5 stars is what we aim for. You know how that works. And then don't forget that you can support the pod for as little as $3 a month by going to patreon.com/Rossifari and, follow along on Instagram and all those lovely social media places at Rossifari and at TikTok at Rossifari Pod. So yeah, all those things. And without further ado, let's get to my interview with Elizabeth Hincker and Katie Benya of the Greensboro Science Center. You just said a word that I don't know, and when we were hanging out before this interview, you said so many words that I don't know, so I'm really looking forward to being educated on words that I don't know. But I'm really excited about this. So when I first connected with Greensboro, my excitement about this place has always been on the terrestrial side because red pandas and binturongs and such. But I love me an aquarium, and I think it's so cool that this facility has both, as well as some other sciencey stuff that is also cool. But we're focused on the animal stuff here, and so I'm really excited for y'all to pump up my level of excitement about the aquarium side here. So before we get to that stuff, though, I kind of like to get into who y'all are. So let's start off, Katie, telling me your history, did you know you loved animals when you were growing up? And how did you get to here today?
Yeah. So I did know when I was younger, when I was about like 4 or 5, I was always carrying cats, always bringing in butterflies, turtles, you name it. I was, always geared towards animals, and very fortunate that I grew up in a family where my parents loved zoos and aquariums as well. And we were situated actually in Northeast Ohio. So we were between the Cleveland Zoo, the Akron Zoo, the Columbus. We had so much around us. And by that time, SeaWorld was still up in Ohio. We had season passes. Yeah.
Wow.
I remember going to SeaWorld up in Ohio, that old. But so I grew up in Northeast Ohio, and I went to Kent State University and got a bachelor's in zoology. And I went to Kent State just because my mom worked there, so I was fortunate enough to get through that. I had the choice to go to a coastal university, but I chose to get kind of more a broad spectrum because I had no idea I wanted aquatics. My top 3 at the time were raptors, big cats, and I want to say the third one was canines. Yeah. Yeah, it was
the
nowhere.
Look that you're getting right now is
Air breather lover.
Okay. Yeah. And like the 4th running up was marine mammal trainer because, every little girl wants to be a dolphin trainer when you grow up. So it wasn't until I was in my junior year of college that I got an internship at the Greater Cleveland Aquarium, and I instantly fell in love with it. I loved everything about the job. It was super chemistry based. It was super exciting, and so I felt like this was exactly where I needed to be. So from there, I kind of did a 180 because I actually was looking into going into behavioral neural endocrinology and doing a master's in that and potentially doing professor work there. Completely did a 180 back to I want to be in an institution with an aquarium or a zoo. And so from there, I ended up being right place, right time. I got a part-time position as an LSS tech, which is a life support systems technician. So that's who takes care of all of the pumps and all of the filtration that runs the aquarium exhibits. So we did that, and I did that for about 2.5 years, and then I finally got my first full-time job out at North Carolina Aquarium on Roanoke Island as a full-time aquarist. Worked there for about 2 years, realized it wasn't quite for me. I really enjoy seahorse propagation. I wanted to get back into cephalopods, the octopus and cuttlefish. And that facility didn't offer that for me. So I looked around and ended up finding Greensboro. And they were like, hey, we're looking for a seahorse aquarist and potentially doing cephalopods. And I was like, please me, that sounds like just right for me. So, and ever since October of 2021, I've been here.
Nice. Very, very cool. Yeah, that's quite the journey that you went on. I like that. That's really cool. How about you, Elizabeth?
So just like Katie, I've always wanted to work with animals. One of my earliest memories was I think I was 6 years old and I tried to dissect a grasshopper on the front stoop. So my mom knew that I was going to work something with animals. Like a little kid, I wanted to be a vet.
Or be a murderer, one or the other.
Either one. I actually do a little bit of both in here. But I always knew I wanted to work with animals, and I ended up looking into vet school, and turns out that was not exactly what I wanted. And I actually started my undergrad journey looking at being a field biologist or working in environmental education. Mm-hmm. Well, I tried that for a summer, and that didn't exactly go as I had wanted it to, and I decided field biology was not for me. So I kind of leaned a little bit more into the environmental education. My undergraduate degree is in Virginia Tech from fisheries biology. So like I said, a little bit leaning more towards the fieldwork aspect. I didn't even take an aquaculture course there. Everything I learned about that was on the job here. But I worked environmental education for a little while, and I'm like, this is a lot of people. And I was just not happy with working with the general public on a 24/7 basis. So then I actually had an internship here in 2018 in the aquatics department. And I interned with the jellies aquarist, and that was where I discovered jellies. And okay, this is weird. A little bit of art, a little bit of science, a little bit of mess around and find out. And I'm like, okay, this is kind of what I want to do. So, like Katie, I actually also worked at the North Carolina Aquariums as a coverage aquarist, and we actually met before this.
Yes.
Hilarious story. We were just in passing, hi. Yeah, we didn't realize it until after we'd been working here for a little while.
Yep.
But then after working on the coast, my husband got a job in Durham, and I'm like, well, why not apply to the Science Center? So I did. I've been here ever since September 2020.
Okay, very cool. I know that Becca loves to point out that so many people that are working here had internships here. So good job keeping that up. That is a favorite repeated tale that we hear. So that's very cool. And y'all find that we're not exactly. I mean, there's not an ocean outside. I don't know if y'all knew that. There's a zoo, which is kind of cool, but there's not an ocean outside. Is it interesting being a bit of a landlocked aquarium?
Absolutely. We make a lot of salt water.
See, I don't find it strange just because as the life support system technician at Cleveland, we were also a landlocked facility. I've only known landlocked facilities. Even though I worked on Roanoke Island, we were on the sound side. So we were miles away from saltwater. So we still made salt water.
Interesting.
Even being a coastal facility. So it's like, same thing,
Gotcha.
Different day.
One of my favorite little factoids that I just know from this life is that in the Phoenix, Arizona area, which is as landlocked as you can be, there are 3 major aquariums that you can get to within like 20 minutes of each other. I've done interviews at all of them. They're all wonderful people out there. But whoever decided that Phoenix area is where we need 3 huge aquariums, I don't know.
I mean, like, people in the desert like to dream about an ocean.
I mean, I guess, yeah.
Maybe.
It's not like they can go see them anywhere else.
Yeah, if I was surrounded by that much rock, I think I would want to be in near water too.
That's fair. And during the summer it gets so hot, you need to do indoor stuff. So,
yes.
It's interesting. And actually, so you had mentioned, Katie, that you worked at the Cleveland Aquarium, right? And is this the one that's in like the basement of the building kind of situation?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Did you know, just a fun little factoid, that there was a big push a couple of years ago to create a very different Cleveland Aquarium before that happened, and it was going to be like a multi-story, like think National Aquarium or something like that. You can there's some interesting stuff online. You can Google this if you're interested. It is
I will have to.
An incredible story. It's one of those things that just makes you shake your head and wonder what could have been.
Yes.
But then you might not be here, so who knows?
Fair. Fair. Yeah. I do know there was a lot of challenges at that facility. Being in a historical building, they retrofitted a lot of the tanks, and it made great displays or like habitats from the front of house, but it did not make great maintenance and or upkeep for the aquarists or life support techs.
That makes sense.
Yep, it was a headache.
I believe it. I believe it. Yeah. So anyway, moving on to the work that is done here. I wanted to focus on a couple of different things, and we keep saying the word propagation. So let's start off talking about the different things that we propagate here, what that means, why we're using the term propagation instead of breeding. Just kind of you guys talk.
You want to start off?
I was going to say, to me, like, the difference between propagation and breeding, like, to me, breeding sounds like you are trying to select for certain traits versus propagating as I'm just trying to make more of them. I'm just trying to make a lot of them.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
As I'm not breeding jellies to have, I'm not breeding my moon jellies to have 6 stomachs instead of 4. I'm propagating them, and occasionally I get 6 stomach weirdos.
No. Those are the stars.
Those are my special jellies.
Yes. Yes.
I have 2 that are going to be on exhibit soon.
Ooh, that's
Usually they don't make it to exhibit quality, but yeah, I've got 2.
So let's talk about the jellies, and let's talk about some of the weirdness. Like, just because there's so much weirdness. I was just back in the propagation lab, and it's very cool, and I learned so much, and so I just kind of want to hear what it's like, what the life cycles are, how you propagate them, all of that stuff.
So jellyfish have a really weird, kind of almost 2-phase life cycle. So what we know as a jellyfish, they reproduce sexually, but they also have an asexual phase of reproduction as well. So what we know as a jellyfish would be termed as medusa. And so those medusas, there actually are males and females. There's no way to tell the difference aside from under a microscope. But the males and females, when the environmental cues are correct, and that's different for every species, sometimes it's seasonality, some of them might even be lunar, some of them are temperature dependent, salinity dependent, all kinds of things. But when the conditions are right, they're going to release their gametes in the water, and then their gametes are going to combine in the water to create what's called a planula larvae. And now my boss calls them little tiny tic tacs because that's kind of what they look like under a microscope, little tiny tic tacs. But the planula will then settle out on a hard surface, and actually plastic does seem to be favored for jellies. Yeah, well, but there's also all the plastic pollution in the ocean too.
Wow, that is weirdly convenient.
Yeah, I know.
All right.
It's not great.
No, not great. But like, I
Yeah.
mean, no, I honestly though, like, to pause for a second, like, I really do love stories when you hear about, you know, the animals that are adapting to us ruining the world. Like, octopus will, like, you know, use the plastic under there to like hide and stuff and build houses and decorate, and like, it's a really sad story, but it's a really cool angle on the sad story.
Yeah,
You know.
jellies love docks.
Okay.
So then what settles out, the planula then settles out and becomes what we call a polyp. And so it's polyp just like we would use with coral, but it is for lack of better terms, it looks like a tiny little anemone. And they are very, very small. You're not going to go out to your local dock and probably find any polyps. So then that polyp, it can stay for a long, like years and years and years. And that polyp will not produce more medusa until environmental cues again are right. Specifically for our population, I just adjust the temperature, and they're like, it's time to propagate. So then specifically for our population, I'll lower the temperature for about a month, and then they're like, it's springtime, time to pop out babies. So then the polyp will kind of create these like little pancake, they almost look like little pancake stacks of Ephira. And then there's Ephira, so multiple Ephira will pop off one polyp, and they are all genetic clones of that polyp. So then those Ephira, they kind of look like these weird like little hand things.
We call them umbrellas.
Yeah, they look like little sassy umbrellas.
Because they have the little ribbings. It's an umbrella.
Well, it's the umbrella that's got blown out by the wind.
Yeah, that's that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's an umbrella that's gotten blown out by the wind, but they pulse around, and as they grow and get the umbrella shape of the jelly, then that's when we would call them in the medusa stage. So there's Ephira. So that's what I produce literally thousands.
That's so much. Okay, so that's that. Okay, so I wow, so many thoughts, so many questions. I guess the first thing that I'm curious about is, so like you say that it takes environmental things to make this happen. Weird, isn't that weird? Why is it like that? Like I can't think of many species that their reproduction is entirely environmentally based.
A lot of them are actually.
Yeah,
and
a lot
we
of
just
them.
don't know it, or we already replicate it in institutions and we are unaware of that.
And
Interesting.
and still there's stuff we don't know. There's species of jellies that we can't propagate yet. There's stuff that, I mean, like, I'm currently trying to propagate one species, and I'm just like kind of twiddling my thumbs, trying to try different things and see what works. Mess around and find out. Like I said,
Right.
mess around and find
Yeah.
out. It's jellies. But yeah,
Wow.
that's jelly propagation.
That's
in a
really
nutshell,
fascinating.
kind of.
And then you said they also can produce sexually once they're in
Yes,
the Medusa stage.
the Medusa stage will then produce sexually. So,
so
it's
weird.
not
This is
like
so
an
weird.
earthworm where you can just like, cut one in half and you get two jellies. They're
Right.
actually not going to survive if you do that. But yeah.
Okay, interesting. But and jellies are weird creatures. They don't have things like brains and nerves and such, right?
Legs.
Right.
They do have
Legs.
stomachs and gonads. The two
Okay.
important things.
Good.
But yeah, no nerve net. No, none of
No.
that.
That's crazy.
They can sense up from down, though. There is a sensory organ that
When
they
you
can
told
sense
me
up.
that, I was like, no way.
That's why they send jellyfish into space, to see whether that sensory organ would, turn
Work.
upside down. It didn't. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. It's a very interesting paper. They sent moon jellies into space. They had them strobolate in space, and then they just wanted to see whether the jellies that were born in space could tell up right from up, and they couldn't.
Wow.
Yeah.
I feel like I often talk about the fact that, like, there are so many things in the ocean that we don't really know and understand just because we haven't really explored the ocean very often, and when we do, sometimes the subs don't make it back. So, cough, cough. Anyway, I just find it so interesting. Like, jellies are something that everybody knows about. Like, everybody has the friend who thinks that you should pee on a jelly sting, which is not true, by the way, and we all know this. But I think that was just made up as an excuse for people to pee on their friends. But whatever. But yeah. But I think it's so fascinating how weird and alien these creatures that we all know.
Oh yeah,
are.
I'm like an alien keeper. Like
Yeah.
really.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. And so you say, that you mess around and find out.
Mm-hmm.
And so I assume that means that a lot of the times it doesn't go well. And, what happens in those situations? Are these just an animal that we need to think of differently than, say, a bear where,
I do conceptualize them a little bit differently. So I'm a horticulturist by hobby as well, and I kind of think of them a little bit like some of the plants that I propagate. And sometimes when you are trying to breed for specific things instead of just propagating, you're really like, well, this guy's not going to survive super well, so I'm just going to go ahead and take you out of the genetic pool. And so I kind of do that with my jellies as well. Sometimes I recognize that this is an animal that is not going to have a good quality of life. It's not going to be a jelly. So then we do end up euthanizing, or better yet, I end up feeding them to other jellies.
Serve a higher purpose.
That is fascinating. And so many, so many facilities talk about the fact that you wouldn't do a feeding of again, if an animal, an ambassador rabbit passes, you're not going to feed it to a bear.
No.
But it's a different way of looking at it with the jellies, and that's really fascinating to me. That's very cool. And so, what different species do you have here?
So we have 3 species of jellies. So we have our typical moon jellies, and ours are actually a tropical moon. They are Hawaiian moons. They stay a nice balmy 75, much easier to work on. We have our upside down jellies, which are my photosynthetic guys that like to live life upside down. They're supposed to be on the ground. And then we also have my project in work is our Atlantic bay nettles. So those guys are a brackish species, and they're the ones that hurt. So I try not to be touched by the stingy spaghetti.
Have you been stung?
Oh yes.
Oof.
Vinegar is yep.
Okay.
So
I've lucked out. I'm her coverage partner.
yeah,
so
we're coverage partners, so we really do work with.
Yeah, when she's not here, I'm taking care of the jellies, and when I'm not here, she's taking care of the seahorses. So.
Nice. Yeah. Okay. Very cool. And how much, since we're learning about these things as we go, kind of, and figuring it out, how much of your work is stuff that needs to be shared? And are there, because I know there are other places that propagate jellies. Is this like a big collaborative thing, or is this just like you in a lab playing mad scientist?
I wish. But there's quite a bit of collaboration. There are specific conferences for jelly keepers.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That is the nerdiest thing I've ever heard, and I host this podcast.
The one that's coming up this year is called Jelly Camp. And my when I told my husband that, he was just like, "Are you sure?" And I'm like, "Yes." When I get my North Carolina license plate, it's probably going to say Ephira or something silly.
Oh my
like
God,
that.
yes, please do that.
Because I already saw someone that had the rotifers license plate, so that's already taken. Yes, I didn't tell you that.
You guys are such dorks. I love this so much. That's awesome. Is there anything else that you want to say about jelly propagation before we move on to the seahorses?
It's fun.
All right, and that is a great way to end that. No, that's actually perfect. I just always like to check in, but that's great. I mean, I think we just spent 15 minutes on jelly propagation. I think that is a really good. It's really
spend
fascinating.
that much on seahorses too. Don't worry.
Oh, I know.
Oh yeah, I'm excited about this. So let's talk about the seahorses. And same thing. Tell me about how the propagation goes. Tell me the interesting facts. Do you call the juveniles sea ponies? Just many questions.
So the juveniles aren't called sea ponies. They're all called sea ponies. Or I just reference them as ponies because I will be like, hey, Elizabeth, can you go do my PM pony feed? Because I have to go do X, Y, and Z instead.
Wrangle the ponies.
Yes, wrangle the ponies. But for our species that we have on site is our Hippocampus abdominalis, which is our potbellies, or also known as the big belly seahorse. So they are the largest species in the world, and they are part of an SSP, which is a species survival plan. So what that is we have this organization that's called AZA.
Oh, trust me, everyone here knows what an SSP is.
Perfect.
Thank you, but I'm just going to let
Yes,
you, we've
perfect.
been there, we've had coordinators on, we're good. We're
Awesome,
good.
awesome.
We're good.
Always like to double
super
check.
appreciate that. Yeah.
So they are one of the 2 seahorse species as an SSP. So we did have the other species in our facility. However, we found out that we, for some odd reason, couldn't keep them here. They just weren't working out. We were running into so many issues. So we decided to focus in on the potbellies.
Okay.
And so currently I actually have 3 batches of fry. They're all about 2 to 3 weeks apart from each other. And so the baby seahorses are called fry, kind of like any kind of baby fish. They're called fry.
That puts a really weird name to the term fish fry.
Yes.
I actually never knew that. That's interesting.
Yes.
Strange, yeah.
And so for our pot bellies, they actually are cued in by environmental cues. However, they don't, I guess they already get it, but I don't quite know how they do it. So they actually do courtship dancing in relation to the lunar cycle.
Okay.
So my males will actually typically give birth on full moon days. So it's about every 28 days when a male gets pregnant. 28 days later, he's going to go ahead and pop out those fry. So,
As luck would happen, it's usually when I'm covering.
I'm so sorry. It's just been happening on Sundays and Mondays.
That's so funny. But
Yes.
you just said something, and I'm guessing most people listening know this, but you just said males get pregnant.
Yes.
So that's interesting.
Yes.
And can you talk about that? And do we know
Absolutely.
why that is or anything?
So it's just kind of one of those things that they evolved. They also evolved without a stomach or a spleen. Don't ask me why. That's just evolution went down that route, and it somehow works out.
So I guess it's not really a potbelly then.
Ba-doom-tsh. They're actually named potbellies because their pouches are so big.
Right, no, that
yeah,
makes sense,
yeah.
yeah.
But our males are the ones that actually carry the eggs and actually give birth. It's confusing because it's not actual like live birth as a mammal would give, but it is live birth in the sense of a fish. So when the male expels the baby seahorses out of his pouch, they are live. So they are kind of live born in that sense, but they are deposited into his pouch as eggs. So it's kind of very similar to like a sand tiger shark.
Okay.
Where they will live within dad and then pop out kind of thing. So
Are the eggs what's the word I'm looking for? Fertilized.
Yes.
Are the eggs fertilized before they go into the pouch?
No,
Okay,
actually.
so that like he okay, yes.
Yeah.
I'm so fascinated
no, you're
by
good.
this.
So, every seahorse species will have a courtship dance,
Okay.
and so the male and female. There are some species that are, monogamous, where they only pair up, and they will pair up. Potbellies are one of those. They're kind of polygamist. They will kind of pair with each other and just kind of cross between, you're like available to like deposit eggs into, I'll go with you this round kind of thing. But essentially the male and female, when the female chooses the male that she is going to court with, they will actually start spiraling around in the exhibit and they'll follow each other. And when they finally spiral up to the top, and that's typically why you need a larger habitat, you need a taller habitat because they need to be able to twirl around each other. And then at the very end of that twirl, the male will actually position right under the female, and the female will deposit the eggs right into his pouch. He can actually open that pouch up, and as she is depositing those eggs, that's when they're getting fertilized.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So, so he is the one, and that's all a part of the Cygnathid family. So the family of Cygnathidae is the families of seahorses, pipefish, sea dragons, pipe horses. So like all of those species and all those groups of animals, the males carry the young. So it's very special.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Because I guess I've always known that the males carry the young, and I've always
Yes.
known about them having a pouch. And I kind of just thought of it as like a marsupial thing.
No.
But it's very different than
Yes.
that. Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. Oh. Okay, cool. So talk about what goes into propagation.
Yeah, so currently we have 18 individuals in our habitat. We have about 4 females, and the rest are males. So that's what, 14 females? Or 14 males?
14 males,
yeah,
yeah.
I could do math.
These are scientists,
Yes.
y'all.
So what happens is after the courtship dance, and I get a lot of courtship behavior. Usually it happens in the morning, and every courtship dance doesn't result in a proper fertilization or deposit of the eggs. And so the males constantly want to dance with the females, and so it's kind of hard to see who actually got the successful transfer of eggs. And so what I'll have to do is I'll have to monitor the males, so they can control the inflation and deflation of their pouch. That's kind of one of the ways they signal that they're ready for the courtship dance, and then how they entice the female over. They'll actually take water into their pouch and inflate it super, super big. So when you see those photos of like the big seahorses with the pouches all puffed up, he's not actually pregnant. He's just being like, hey, I'm ready to dance. Are you?
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
But I'll notice that, a couple weeks after I notice a bunch of courtship dancing, I'll notice 1 or 2 males aren't really inflating and deflating throughout the day. And so that's when I really keep an eye on them. And pouches will expand a little bit, but it's not to the extent of the males that are displaying for the females. It won't get that super stretched look. So I'll just kind of look for a male that's like looking a little full, but not like overinflated. And then I will let them give birth on their habitat, because I want to make sure that he is not stressed, because the birth event is stressful for them. And so let him give birth in his habitat, and then we'll collect the fry. We're working on a fry collection right now to increase the survivability of the fry, because right now what they're doing is I'm trying to get them out. They'll float to the surface because that's what they're naturally supposed to do. They go straight up to the surface and they hang on to a bunch of kelp and seaweed. So I'll deploy some seaweed at the end of the night before I leave, and when I think I have a pregnant male that's about ready to pop. But unfortunately, a lot of times they end up in our filtration sock. And so usually I can get a good amount to survive out of the filter sock, but it is kind of an aggressive flow cascading into the sock, so all of them don't make it. So we're working on a collection bin to be able to kind of skim them at the top of their habitat, so they don't hit the filter sock. And then hopefully we'll have a much better survivability rate down the line.
That's cool. And what is their survivability rate like in the wild?
It's 0.5 to 1%.
Ah, okay.
Yes, very small.
This is a very small, so any percentage is really
Yes,
promising in this,
yes,
right? Okay.
yes. So between all 3 clutches, we have about 32 left. And we had a couple half clutches or new dads. And so when a male seahorse gives his first clutch or his first birth event, typically you don't get a full, 200 to 300. You get like 50. And a lot of them can be underdeveloped because they're still figuring it out. And so he still is too. And so I think 2 of the 3 clutches are definitely first-time dads. And so we didn't get a very good survivability rate just because they were underdeveloped and we didn't get a lot to begin with.
Right. No, that makes sense. That's really interesting. It's so, we talk about breeding on here so much because of SSPs and because your facility keeps having ridiculous animals like bintrongs and red pandas giving birth. So, and a pygmy hippo, just 1 or 2 kind of cool things.
Don't forget the ray.
The ray is very cute.
Yes,
The ray is very cute. Yes. But I guess it's just so fascinating to me to hear like both of these worlds and how it is still, breeding we'll call it propagation for the reasons that you said, but it's so different than that's really cool and really interesting.
Typically on the aquatic side, it's viewed more as propagation because we're not necessarily mass producing, but that is the life plan for a lot of these fish. They mass produce, so a small amount of them will make it to adulthood. Whereas, all of our terrestrials and mammals will produce single or smaller clutches of, individuals. And so that is more, and that's where AZA and the SSPs can come in and be like, we recommend these 2 to breed.
Right.
Whereas with us, we do have recommendations for our seahorses, and it's more of like group rather than individual seahorses. We actually had 2 different genetic lines under our facility. Unfortunately, we just lost the ones that we originally got. They were about 10 years old, so they were way past their lifespan, which was great.
Right.
But we did lose the original genetics, and so now we've got a bunch of we don't know who's who kind of, and so we're kind of producing for our sake of being able to, have them on their habitat and for the people and the public to be able to see them.
Makes sense. And what is the lifespan?
So for the potbellies, it's very interesting. We actually recently found out through some ZIMS, which is one of the databases that we use. It found out that the males usually have about a 5-year lifespan, but the females can actually last up to 10 years. So it was really interesting to find that out because we always thought it was 5 years across.
Right.
And now we're like, wait, the females actually get bigger and can live longer.
Wow.
How old was Tina when she passed?
I think she was 8 or 9. I think she was right around her time.
Tina was our biggest, and she had the best little Siri. So
she was gorgeous.
She was a doll.
Nice. That's so cool. And that kind of brings me to an interesting question, which is with both of these, I'm guessing more with the seahorses, especially given the lack of brain of the jellies. But is there such a thing as the personality?
Yes, there 100% is. You have to look closely, and you have to, watch them throughout their lifespan. But we actually had a male recently as well who had a very special personality. We nicknamed him Sparkles. He was just the seahorse that wasn't quite a seahorse. He would kind of hitch incorrectly, lay at the bottom, but would eat just fine, was doing great. But
he held onto his nose. I'm not too sure he was doing that great.
He would also put himself into a chokehold because seahorses will grab anything with their tail because that's their the way they survive. They have that prehensile tail. So, like, they'll grab onto their buddies, they'll grab onto themselves sometimes. And then when you look at that and you're like, yeah, you wouldn't make it out in the wild. So
that's really cool. Mm-hmm. That's very neat. I like that. And then jellies, I'm assuming they don't, again, no brain.
I have favorites, but yeah, there's
You have favorites?
Yes, I like my 6 stomach ones. They're my weirdos.
Well, those are like the
and some of the upside downs with the better zoanthelli.
The prettier things.
Yeah.
Fair.
It really does. I mean, it's funny because you're right. It sounds a lot like horticulture when you talk about this.
I mean, like I said, that's how I conceptualize it. That's how I explain it to my interns as well. Because I have had some that were like, oh, think about it like this, where, they really are. They are very, very similar to plants in terms of, like, they really will only vaguely react to their environment, just like plants will. Plants will move to, capture sun. So
they just vaguely pulse around.
Yeah. I mean, they do kind of pulse a little bit more if you poke them, but...
Good. And I think this is actually, I think this is really cool and really insightful, like I said, because it is just such a different look at things. I think that's a really cool, different perspective. Because really, one thing that I have learned is from doing this podcast that most animals are just dogs or cats. Mm-hmm. Like, you can relate almost every animal that we talk about to a dog or a cat. Just, and you just can't with jellies. That's really cool. So I wanted to talk to y'all about training. And really what I mean by that is Becca very specifically told me that y'all do some really fascinating training that I need to talk about. And I don't want to piss Becca off. So let's talk about the kind of training that y'all do. And I'll start off by saying that I did get to witness a training session. So let's start there.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have 2 large rays in our shark habitat that we actually pull off into our acclimation pool that is attached to the main exhibit. And we do training sessions with each individual. So we do Rogue is our southern stingray and Surfer is our spotted eagle ray. They each kind of get trained for some of the similar reasons of making sure they get the proper diet, their proper vitamins. If we need any oral medication, we can ensure they get that. But for Rogue, it's more of a cognitive exercise. For Surfer, it's more of a make sure he has good access to a safe time eating. Just because we did have an unfortunate event of him during one of our shark feeds, he was actually hit in the crossfire, and he does like to take his time chewing his food, so we want to make sure we have that safe space for him. So we will pull them in at different times of the day. So Rogue does her training session in the morning, whereas Surfer does his training session in the afternoon when we do shark feed. We pull them off right before, and we do our training session while the sharks get fed. And so we have, 5, 6, something like that, behaviors that we ask the rays to do.
So steady ones.
Yeah, so we ask them to do different behaviors. Some of them are just fun cognitive behaviors for them, which is like circle. We literally just ask them to spin in a circle for us right in front of our gate. We also do an A to B where we'll actually send them to one of the other trainers. We do other things like follow, which we can actually guide them into a stretcher if we need to, or we guide them into our blue bin for their knockdowns or any sort of exams that we need to catch them up for. So it's more voluntary. We're asking them to do these certain things, and they happily oblige, and then we're able to take that stress out of the catch-up and the vet exam part, which is great because Surfer's a spooky boy.
Yeah, no nets.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Also, it took me a second when you said catch up. You said ketchup, and I was like, ketchup? I was like, I was
words,
really thrown, like, not making a joke here. It took me a second. I was like, wait, what? I'm confused, but that makes sense. So you mentioned that Surfer spooks easily,
yes.
And it was Surfer's training that I got to see, surprising no one because if I'm going to do something in the morning or afternoon, it's gonna be the afternoon.
Oh yeah.
And so, can you just talk a little bit? So Elizabeth, you were in the water when I was there, and I noticed that your movements were very slow and very deliberate. And I'm curious, like, how much of an impact you being in there has on Surfer, how he deals with that, and like how you have to adjust.
Yes, so I know you didn't see the beginning, but we actually jump into the acclimation pool before we pull him in, because we have found that if we jump in with him in there, he gets very, very, very spooked, very uncomfortable, fast movements. He's just, us as fish people, we know that this fish is uncomfortable.
Right.
But yes, I was moving very slowly and very deliberately. He tends to like to move slowly, so I kind of like to match his energy. I am slow. I am like the jellies. I am just chilling. Rogue, on the other hand, you kind of have to. It's fast and furious with Rogue.
Oh, yes.
But Surfer also does not like when we take our feet off the ground, so feet have to stay on the ground. So you just kind of shuffle around. But yeah, he tends to get very spooked with fast movements, and that may have something to do with his bites in years past. But I mean, that's probably just also who he is as an animal. He's just a chill dude.
And like, there are times when we do intentional quicker movements just so he gets used to that. But a lot of times, if he's really chewing or working on a piece of food, or if it's a brand new enrichment, we don't want to add additional.
We don't want to harsh his mellow, man.
Yeah.
He's our surfer dude.
He's our little golden retriever.
I know.
That is, I mean, frankly, it's adorable. And I feel like a lot of people, like, we talk about training a lot on the podcast, but, like, I don't feel like people think you can do it with an animal like a ray. So is it the same basic idea of, like, using approximations and, like, positive reinforcement and, like, all the stuff that we say when we talk about dogs or, you know, pandas or whatever?
Absolutely. So Surfer does have a bridge, and it is literally just a clicker that you could go to PetSmart and get.
Wow.
And so when we click, we don't assume that he hears it the way we normally hear it. We always want to make sure he's in contact with his target. So when we click, he essentially feels the little vibrations with his little snoot. And he clearly understands that means food is coming.
Yes.
He really does.
Okay.
Yeah, so each one of our rays has a separate target color and shape that is designed for them. And we were fortunate enough to inherit the team, and they came pre-trained.
Nice.
Love that. But so yeah, they have that positive association with that their target, and then they each have a separate bridge. So I know you said that Surfer has a clicker. Rogue actually has a mammal whistle.
Oh.
I know it sounds really weird.
Interesting.
She 100% can hear it, because as soon as we blow that whistle, she is waiting for food. She is our little sassy girl, and will let us know if we're moving slow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay. I wouldn't think that the two rays would be so wildly different.
They are yin to yang.
That's really
Rogue
cool.
is a feral cat. Surfer's a golden retriever.
I like it.
A feral tortoiseshell, because she's got the tortitude.
She's a tortie, yeah.
Yes, she got the tortitude.
Now, I'm curious. I know they're different species.
Yes.
Is this like, is it a species thing, or is it a true, like, just individual animal thing?
It's the individual animal thing, because I've seen and have worked with Southerns at other facilities, and they don't near have the amount of sass that Rogue does. So
Wow.
it's her personality.
She's also kind of picky, too. Like, I've heard of other Southerns that'll just eat anything. She's like, no, it's too crunchy for me.
Yeah, she's our special child, because rays are designed to crush crustaceans. In the wild, they would encounter, shrimp, clams, mussels, bivalves, crabs. That is their bread and butter. That is what majority of their diet should be. We offer Rogue that as enrichment now, because she will not eat clams, mussels, Jonah crab. Like, just won't eat it. She just glides right over it and ignores it.
Wow.
And we're like, okay.
So what does she eat?
So she actually gets the same diet as the sharks. We kind of do a large food pool for the aquarium, and so we get a rotation of squid, capelin, herring, bonito, salmon, mahi. Shrimp. Yeah, we get shrimp. I feel like there's one other I'm missing that's big. Blue runner. That's the other one.
Mm-hmm.
So
Cool.
big mix.
Okay.
She does like to chew on heads of things, though, which is funny.
Yes.
She likes the heads, but she won't eat. Yeah.
Maybe it's not enough meat in the clams. I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe she just likes chewing on heads.
That's fair. That's fair.
That is a sassy behavior.
Yeah, Rogue is also one that we don't like. We can put our fingers in surfers' mouths. I would not put my fingers anywhere near Rogue's mouth. Your finger would come off.
She's definitely scraped us a couple times. Yeah. I've gotten a little nick from her, just trying to feed her, and she nailed my hand, and I was like. But it was just a small scratch, kind of like if I fell down, on the sidewalk.
Yeah,
honestly, I've done worse to myself gardening. So
yes, I have too.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, that's really fascinating that they're so different. Mm-hmm. And I feel like when people think about rays, just visually, they're thinking more about what like Rogue looks like. Like the southern stingray is kind of the average thought. So can you all describe Surfer and especially a very important and boopable part of his anatomy?
So Surfer, I'm sure a lot of people know what cownose look like because those are, when I hear of a stingray, immediately I always think of cownose rays, even though it's different habitat really because they are more a pelagic species than your typical benthic species. But he looks kind of like a cownose, but instead of that nice lobe rounded front, he's got a nice pointed snout. And it's really actually fun. I don't know if you caught that in the training, but he'll actually flex his nose.
Yes.
And he's got lots of sensory inputs there. And so you can it's very squishy, and you can kind of just give him little snoot boops, and he enjoys it.
I have tested that snoot before, so.
Yeah, same.
That is really cool and really special. And so are there other animals that y'all train that maybe people would be a little surprised by?
Yes. So particularly under my gallery, I do train a peacock whoopeel. Her name is Allie. She is target trained. Wow. Right now she's denning up during this time of the year, so I haven't gotten her to pull her out of her den, but during the time that she's not denning up, she's very food motivated. And so it was just one of those things, again, I inherited the habitat that she was in, and she came pre-trained, but she associates very well food with her target.
Okay. And, I don't think you think about eels as another one that you train a lot. That's pretty cool.
Yep.
Why is she denning?
So she is about 7 years old,
Okay.
And so that's when they reach that sexual maturity. And the wolf eel is very much like any other typical eel. Even though she's not a true eel, she is actually a fish because she has pectoral fins.
Okay.
That's the one main. There's other ways to differentiate between, but if you look like at a green moray, which we have two here as well, they don't have any sort of fins. It's literally just the long. Yep, she's got two little fins, but she's like any other eel where she likes to hide in rocks and stuff. And I find a few months out of the year, she just won't come out of her den. And so we're not super concerned about her losing weight because she's chunky as it is. But also if she was really hungry, she would come out of her den to eat that. So
it's not like any type of hibernation or like baby type thing.
No,
especially at this place where you're dropping babies everywhere.
Yeah.
It's just a thing.
It's more kind of baby related in the fact that like if we did have a male that she had access to, she would probably end up mating, and then the denning up behavior would be her guarding her pups for a period of time and then letting them off. But she doesn't have access to a male, so she kind of still goes through the motions of denning up for a few months out of the year and then coming out and being like, hey, I'm ready to train. Are you?
I'm hungry.
Yes.
Wow, that's really different. Okay, very cool. Are you able to train the other eels, the morays?
Yes, so the morays are actually trained as well. They are target trained. Most of our training is target training. The exception is our rays in the aquarium, and our penguins and otters, I believe, are not target trained really.
They're working on getting the eels to like willingly go in a net kind of thing as well.
Are they still looking to get them in the tubes?
I
feeding
believe
tubes?
that is still. So one of the common ways to feed moray eels is to have them go in a large tube. Okay. So then you just drop the food down. It's typically a large clear tube. I've seen it done with smaller morays, but it helps prevent other animals from stealing their food. Prickles.
He's our pufferfish.
Yeah, he's our pufferfish. He's actually he's trained as well.
How did I know as soon as you said Prickles that it was the pufferfish? I just instantly knew that.
It's always the pufferfish.
It's always the puffer.
Or the trigger. It's the puffer or the trigger.
Yes. But our technically Prickles is trained. He does have a target and a clicker as well that is designed for him. When we had our cownose in our shark habitat, they also were trained to eat out of a basket. However, we have moved them out of our shark habitat and into our touch pool just because live better lives over there.
Better welfare.
Yes.
Welfare.
Yes.
That makes sense. Yeah, I always find it so fascinating that, like, sharks are just in mixed species exhibits a lot. And I've come to understand, and from talking and doing interviews, I am aware of the fact that, as long as they're well fed, they're generally not going to hunt when they could have food delivered to them.
Yep.
But also, they're
the occasion,
sharks.
yep.
Yeah.
Instinct takes over. And
Yeah.
so, if you got a sick or injured fish, they go. And you're
Yep.
like,
Nature's cleanup crew.
can't do anything to prevent that. So have fun.
Yeah.
It's enrichment.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it makes, like, it's funny to me that I think a lot of the people who complain about that kind of stuff in captivity are the same ones who complain that you're, maybe not providing enough of a true wild environment, although good facilities, accredited facilities, do a great job of providing it. But it's kind of that weird thing, and it's where a lot of that argument starts to fall apart to me, because it's where it just becomes, oh no, you just want them to live in a fairy tale world.
Yep.
You want them out in the wild, which is beautiful and pristine, where nobody ever gets hurt, and blah. No, this just isn't how it works. And I love that. I feel like the aquarium side of things shows that a little bit more than zoos often do, just because of situations like sharks existing, you don't have lions in a mixed species exhibit as often.
No.
But you do have lionfish in a mixed exhibit.
Yes. Well done. Yes. Very cool. And so, how much do you have to adapt training to the whole, like, water thing? Do y'all go in? Do you scuba to train? Do you do it at the top of the tank? How does that work?
So at our facility, we never want to associate a diver with food, because
makes
that
sense.
leads to very bad things.
That was a dumb question in
Yes.
retrospect. Yes, okay.
Other facilities will do training in water,
Interesting.
or like when divers go in. It all depends on what is in the habitat
Right.
and the facility's approach to it. However, because our shark habitat does have 2 large sharks, and that's the apex predator in that. We don't tempt fate. We just don't. So all of our training is done either having a diver in the act pool, which isn't really a diver, it's a trainer in a wetsuit. We're kind of, waters at hip or waist high kind of thing. Or we
I was going to say depending on height. Because
Depending on
I guess
height.
it's more,
pretty high on the
closer
list.
to torso.
I'm 5 feet and the act pool is 4 feet.
Yeah, fair. Or we do it dry side where, our aquarists are standing or sitting up at top of the gate or standing on top of our platform to access our habitat. And we kind of do that. But a lot of the things that we use are a lot of visual. So we do verbal commands or verbal behavior requests, I should say, for the rays, but they're really the only one in the aquatic side that gets verbal.
Okay.
So our sharks that are station trained don't get any verbal commands or behavior cues or anything like that. They literally have their station target dropped into the water. The sharks know when they come over to that, that's where they're going to get fed. When it comes to, Prickles, whenever we do train him, he just gets that target. And when he comes over, he gets the click in the food. Allie does have...
I hear you. Allie, target.
Yeah,
All the
she
time.
doesn't listen. I try.
I was going to say, how many of the animals that don't get verbal cues still get verbal cues because
All
you're
of them.
trainers?
All
Yeah,
of them, yes.
that's what I thought.
And Allie's is more of a call to session
Okay.
than a verbal cue. Well, it's a cue to call to session, but it's not a behavior command ask thing. So,
That's the technical term, y'all.
yes.
Okay, that's very cool. That's interesting. And then, are there any other animals that y'all do training with that might be fascinating?
So, I guess another puffer. I used to be in charge of the Rainbow Reef enclosure, which is back in our expansion, and it's a typical Indo-Pacific habitat. But we have his name is Mylar. He's not a Mylar. He's a balloonfish. And so I started target training him because I wanted to... The goal... So we never really start training unless there's a goal in mind. We don't just want to add more work if there's not a reason behind needing to train them. Some of it can be cognitive, but a lot of it is there's a goal. So for Mylar, I wanted him to be able to be targeted into a net. So if we had to catch him out, we could just target him in, net him out, and I don't have to go chasing him around his habitat. I didn't have to stress him out. He wouldn't, inflate. I wanted to avoid all of that stress. So it was more of the target you, get you used to your target and your tongs. Okay, let's progressively step. So I got him kind of close to the net, and then he saw it and he was like, nope. So it's a work in progress.
Bit more work to do.
Yes.
But I mean, that's what training is. It's all approximations, getting closer, figuring that out.
Yep.
Like, yeah, that's not a fail. It's just a step.
It's a step.
Yeah,
it's definitely a step. Some people think that our octopus is trained. It's more of a desensitization.
Yeah.
So every giant Pacific octopus that comes through our facility has the same weight basket because the weight basket kind of stays with their habitat. And so we always want them desensitized to that. So what I would do is, we'd get a weight on our GPO, and then like the next week, I would actually deploy it as enrichment rather than using it as another weighing option. So we would typically try and get a weight at once a month, sometimes once every 2 weeks if we were going through a big growth spurt or a big drop in weight and we wanted to track that closely. So, but using it as enrichment, and I would put food in it and I would put it in her habitat overnight. I wanted to make sure that it came out as a neutral object rather than a negative.
Right.
So I have to have that positive mixed in with the negative.
Interesting. I'm actually, I would have guessed that there would be more training. So that's
They're
interesting.
so intelligent that there's not a lot of training.
I guess it's more enrichment that you have, because I know. I mean, I've had the amazing experience of spending time with some different octopus. And
it's more play and enrichment than training.
I got you.
Yeah. They're called as sessions, and so like for the GPO, I'll turn off the filtration so the habitat's nice and calm, and I get a better look at the GPO in it. But essentially, the call to session is me just making a bunch of noise at the top of the habitat, and I will actually have a peanut butter jar that I will pour water at the top. And our previous GPO loved that. Octavia loved being watered, and so as soon as she saw that, she would just come right up and just. So there's not much training there, but we do a lot of training with our penguins and our otters and our monkeys. But that's typical because they're terrestrials.
No, that makes sense. I guess I just thought of like GPO was the first thing that came to my mind when you said training. But you're right. Even, all of the things that I've gotten to do, I have watered an octopus as well. Does not make them grow.
No.
We used an actual watering can.
I have one of those too.
Nice. Yeah, very cool. And we've like played with Legos and stuff. And you're right. None of that is training. It's play. Which
it's
is
play.
Kind of fun.
It's cognitive stimulation for them. But yeah, there's no behaviors you can ask them to do because they're just 8 arms.
Right.
And you're like, they're a lot.
No,
high five.
Very real, yeah.
We're like, hi.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting. All right. So I have to ask before we roll on here. For each of you, what is your favorite animal or species to work with? Individual, species, whatever.
That's a hard question.
So I'm going to say giant Pacific octopus, and I know there's not a whole lot of training in that.
Oh, no, that's fine. I'm just saying in general,
No,
just for
yeah.
whatever. Trust me, I get it. They're amazing.
Oh, yes, they're so much fun. Unfortunately, our current one is failure to thrive, and we've done a lot of looking into it and kind of reaching out to other facilities, but she's just not at the proper size to be going through senescence, even though she is senescing. So we didn't really get we didn't get to see her behavior shine. And she was she just kind of had the personality of, hey, I don't want to really interact with you. But our previous one, Octavia, I got about 4 or 5 months of great bonding with her. And they're just so much fun. They can solve so many different puzzles. You can give them so much, and they still want more. And you're just like, I always felt so bad when I had to like leave Octavia because I'd be interacting with her for an hour. And I'm like, I have to go do other things, hon. And so I'd, close the lid on top of her habitat, and I just see suckers sticking to the lid, and I'm like, I'm sorry.
It really does.
I'm so sorry.
I really get it. Jupiter is the one octopus. I've met a few, but that's the one that I really interacted with multiple times, played with, knew me, and it's tough. And the fact that their life cycles are so short is insane. I was back on tour when he started to enter into senescence and stuff, and it was just
It can
just
be
sad.
heartbreaking.
Just
Yeah.
bad. Yeah.
Yeah,
It was like, we
it's-
bonded so much.
Yep.
I'm also convinced that they would take over the world if
And
they
that's-
had a
oh,
longer
yes.
life cycle.
I literally-
It's
Sometimes
crazy.
I wish they would.
One of the interns actually asked me why they had such a short lifespan, and I literally turned to her and I was like, it's because they're so intelligent that if they lived for 10, 20 years, they would be the dominant species on our planet because they're that intelligent.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I would welcome our new cephalopod overlords.
Honestly, I feel like they might do a better job than
I
humans.
mean,
Shellfish for everyone.
Doesn't take much. And how about you, Elizabeth?
I honestly love propagating my jellies. I love working with the corals too, but honestly, it's probably Surfer.
Nice.
Yeah, he's just
number
such a
2.
sweet
He
animal.
is.
And I also actually did get to work with him when I was an intern too. Like I remember
Nice.
doing target training with my mentor with Surfer, and then just like today, I was like, I'm in the water with you again, bud. Like it's pretty cool.
That is really cool.
He's a sweetheart.
And we've talked about Rogue and Surfer's personalities, but let's talk about the baby before we head on out here.
Oh, yes,
I'm
Kiwi.
understanding that Kiwi has some slight personality as well.
Absolutely. So I've actually been covering Kiwi these past couple weekends while Josh, her main aquarist, has just been on his weekend. And working with Rogue, I kind of know how her behavior is, and I've heard about Papaya's behavior from Josh and Bethany, who worked with her the most. And she's more of the picky eater, kind of is very obstinate, whereas Rogue is very sassy. And somehow Kiwi's just the mess of two, even though Rogue is not even the same species. And I'm like,
Not even the same type of water.
No. I'm like, how did we fit both these personalities into one? I will say, the one good thing, though, is that Kiwi is very good about being caught up to be fed.
She will jump in it.
Yeah,
Oh.
she will jump in the net to
Wow.
be brought up to her container to feed. And I'm just like, thank you.
Excellent.
Yes, so
That
she is
really
great
cool.
about that.
That's awesome. Very cool. And how about a conservation organization?
So, talking about training, we do a bit of training with our penguins, and one of the great, conservation programs out there is sand cob
Yes.
because, the African penguins, which is the species we have, is endangered, and, their habitat is being threatened, and overfishing is causing, a decline in their food source. And Sand Cobb is just doing so many efforts to help with, awareness and being able to help the natural populations kind of maintain but also grow. So
Yeah, sand cob is great.
It is
Absolutely.
great.
Very cool.
and I know our institution just got accepted into the Florida Reef Track Rescue Program. So we will be having that in our new ARC system that we are going to be building here soon. And so we will be helping with the propagation of corals to be able to be restored out to the Florida Reef, which is awesome. But I know they recently went diving in the Keys to kind of figure out essentially to do a dive program out there so we could get people down there helping with the front lines as well as helping on the behind the scenes things. So Rachel is our coral aquarist, and I know she really enjoyed Reef. That was an awesome program they went down, and so it was just so cool to see and hear the stories of them going out onto the reefs and helping clean off all the coral trees and looking at the planting sites and doing fish surveys as well. So Reef is always a great thing because they're helping to restore a habitat that's been wiped out, and we're still, years later, we're still trying to restore a small percentage of that. So
Yeah, that's a lot better than what I would have said. My mind just went blank. I don't know. We restore coral.
Good. That was perfect. And then how about? It's time now, don't you know? We've come to the end of the show. But there's one tale left to go. You're gonna laugh and say, oh no. It's time for the Rossifari poop story.
I mean, I feel like everyone thinks everything that I do is disgusting.
That's in your personal life, that's
I
at
will
work,
say foul
whatever.
knobs. You can talk about that.
Oh God, yeah, that is a smell unto
There you go.
God. Yeah.
Okay, so what is this? Tell me.
So knops are the food that we feed jellies. They are freshly hatched baby brine shrimp. They are incredibly dirty, and if you were to leave them in a sealed container for 24 hours, it is one of the foulest smells you will ever smell.
Oh.
It is. It's like
I can't even describe it.
It's like estuary plus sewage
Plus rotten eggs.
eggs.
Oh, yeah. It's bad.
Ew.
And it's even worse when you spill it on yourself. But
Yes.
I mean, they just go around all day smelling like it.
Yes.
But yeah, there is definitely a smell. I can smell when the napkins weren't cleaned out properly. I'm like, oh,
Yep.
gotta get on the intern about that.
And then do you have a poop story?
So, I won't necessarily say a poop story,
Poop story.
but I will say when Octavia was in her prime, so that was our previous GPO, she actually was kind of sassy like Rogue. And she would actually squirt at us. So we actually have a little placard, or a little whiteboard back behind her habitat that literally says, "Days since Keeper has been squirted by GPO." And there were many days where that was a 0. And it was just like we were going to pack up, or like, we were in the middle of interacting with her and she had one more shrimp left and she would just soak us. And she'd be like, "Give me it." And we're like, "Sorry. My bad."
Yeah, they actually have pretty good aim too. Like
Wow.
she was
Yes.
clearly aiming.
Oh,
at
yes.
you.
So they can actually control where their siphon expels. And so a lot of times they can control it out underneath their mantle, around their bell, and they can control what side. And so they're very accurate.
They are so weird. and
They are
so cool.
so weird.
I'm constantly learning more about them, and I have watched the films and read Soul of an Octopus and
Yes.
hung out with them, and I'm still constantly learning. I did not know they could do that. That's
Oh,
so
yes.
cool.
Yes. It's really fascinating because that's also one of the behaviors we actually watch for
Okay.
more of like the defensive. It can be used as more of like, I think interpreted as, "Hey, I'm annoyed," or "Hey, like interact more." But one of the things we do watch out is like if Pumpkin's in her den and I'm trying to feed her, if she starts expelling her siphon at me, I know I'm like, "Okay, we're done. You're done. I'm walking away," kind of thing. So,
right. Makes sense.
yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you both for this.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
All right, so there you have it, folks. An awesome look at some of the cool stuff going on behind the scenes at the aquarium at the Greensboro Science Center. I'm so thankful to Elizabeth and Katie for spending some time with me, showing me training sessions, and I really actually, between my visit then and the next time I was at the aquarium, I think I've been behind the scenes at every possible place you can be behind the scenes with the animals now. All I have left to do at that aquarium is dive in with the sharks and such, and I basically, let's just face it, let's be honest, just in general, I should basically just get a job at the Greensboro Science Center because I'm there a lot and I love it, and I like doing all the things that you can do there. So yeah, it's been really fun partnering up with these people. Now you may notice, even though her name was dropped today, Becca did not interrupt this interview. And I just want to let y'all know that is not because she has learned things like self-control. No. That is merely because Becca was not there that day, was unable to be there to interrupt the interview. That might actually be why it went so well. No, I'm kidding. But hey, don't forget, if you haven't yet, go and check out Science Unleashed, the podcast that Becca hosts at the Greensboro Science Center. I was the guest on episode 5, so go listen to that one. Give them lots of listens and lots of love. You can find it wherever you're listening to this, including on their YouTube channel. So, all right, friends, I'll be back here on Friday with Zoo News and next Tuesday with another interview episode. But until then, remember, the word credits backwards is Steiderk. The Rossifari podcast is produced, hosted, and engineered by John Rossi. Editing and fact-checking by John and Dr. Zoe Rossi. Our theme song is Sevens by Nathan Burke, performed by Nathan and John. Interrupting John theme and additional voices by Taylor Isaac Gray. You can reach John directly on Instagram and Facebook at Rossifari or by email at rossifaripod@gmail.com. Rossifari is part of the Daydreamer Media Network. Now, stop listening to me and go visit a zoo.